Hello, everyone. I have 1:40 on my clock, so we can get started. Welcome to our session today, The Art of Good Trouble, Understanding Intersectionality and its Impact on Health. Before we begin, I wanted to cover some housekeeping items. Please keep your cameras off and your microphones muted throughout the session. If you have any questions, please use the chat feature. We will get to as many of them as possible at the end of the session. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Betty S. Foe. Betty S. Foe currently serves as the Quality Improvement and Accreditation Program Manager at Cabarrus Health Alliance, CHA, and is an active member of the executive management team. She completed a master's in public health leadership with a global health and maternal child health concentration from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She also holds a bachelor's degree in public health education with a health studies concentration from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro and a bachelor's degree in psychology from East Carolina University. Betty is a certified health education specialist, passionate about continuous quality improvement and sustainable development for both global and rural citizens. Outside of CHA, Betty volunteers as a public health accreditation board site visitor and serves as a mentor coordinator and summit fundraiser liaison for empowerment. Betty's sincere interest for global health equity led her to establish Project Genius, and that's with a one, an organization dedicated to empowering humanitarians of African descent with a platform to develop sustainable projects that improve the quality of life for Africans. Betty, if you are ready to take over and present, let me know and I will stop screen sharing. Everyone, let's welcome Betty Foe.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It is good to be here. Let me go ahead and get my screen up. Hopefully, you all can see it. Okay. So, thank you for that great introduction. I really appreciate it. So, today's session is going to be about the art of good trouble. Angela Davis said, "I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change, and I'm changing the things I cannot accept." I know that resonates with several of us who are on this presentation or this call training today. We are looking for change, and we are looking to make a difference in our communities, in the world. And so therefore, I think this resonates for year 2020, and it has stood the test of time. And so I hope that at the end of this presentation, you will be able to cause good trouble and also to make change in your respective domains. So the topic, understanding intersectionality and its impact of health, basically is, and I'm going to lower this right here. You'll get an in-depth overview of dismantling systematic racism from a public health perspective. We'll discuss participants or your understanding of intersectionality and how it currently applies in public health practice, policy, and research on social determinants of health and health equity. So why bridge the gap? And I always say we are gap bridgers because we see something and we work towards change. As you all know, my name is Betty Foe. I am first generation American. My father is Sierra Leonean and my mother is from the United Kingdom. Although I was born in the US, I refer to Sierra Leone as my home. At age 8, my family and I were forced to flee home due to the Civil War. This life-changing event gives me the diverse perspective of seeing and understanding gaps, or as intersections. Growing up between the US and Sierra Leone and the UK heavily influenced my view of healthcare as a recipient and working in the field. But most of all, my background has allowed me to connect the pieces in order to bridge the gap and move from silos to synergy, and also to cause good trouble. The images that you see on this slide are a reflection of me. In May 2019, upon my last return from Sierra Leone, I founded Project Genesis. Project Genesis is an organization dedicated to empowering humanitarians of African descent with a platform to develop sustainable projects that improve the quality of life for Africans. Project Genesis is a combination of my sincere interest in global health equity and sustainability and continuous quality improvement. So not only am I the quality improvement and accreditation program manager at Cabarrus Health Alliance, but I have my lifelong passion of Project Genesis. Together with my work at CHA, which is Cabarrus Health Alliance, and experience working for large healthcare systems, it uniquely provides me a diverse experience to collaborate across sectors to produce larger and better outcomes. The image on your top right is from 2011, when I studied abroad in Zambia for 3 months. There, I realized quickly the impact of voluntourism, which is a form of tourism in which travelers participate in voluntary work, typically for charity. I was there doing the same thing, service learning project with UNCG. But what I realized is when we were working and we were approaching the people of Livingston, Zambia, the natives, that we were not approaching them from an intersectional lens. We were approaching them as, we are here to help. We are here to do everything for you. And at the end of the day, we were not changing the lake. We were addressing the fish. We were providing interventions that addressed single people. And it really hindered the success of that city we were in. And it was actually the first time that I realized there's a little bit more here than what the eye can see. And we need to be able to approach these community members from the point of addressing not only sustainability, but also addressing the intersectionality of them. The image on your bottom left is, I believe, I want to say 2017, but I'm not sure. I can't remember necessarily. From Jimmy Bagbo, Sierra Leone, where my father's paternal village is. Before we went there in 2017, the village actually was burnt down by civil war and unrest. One of the things that we were able to implement there from a sustainability perspective was to really capitalize on the gifts of the community. We know that they are good in agriculture. We know that they can have sustainability from agriculture. We started to see them not only as our paternal relatives, but as individuals from a different perspective and using an intersectionality lens. The image to your left is the Project Genesis logo. Growth really does matter in order to produce larger and positive outcomes. But in order to do so, we need to look beyond what is facing us. Now let's discuss the art of good trouble. So join our truth, right? A systems thinker, a visionary, the ability to think at a systems level about trends and challenges and look ahead of vision, right? She was passionate builder of effective mission-based relationships, committed to improving her community and improving the lifestyle of African Americans at a scale that drives decision-making and priorities. She had the capacity to direct the passion towards the deepening of existing relationships and the energetic development of new partners and allies to enhance impact. She was also a collaborative, empathetic leader in a dynamic environment. And, I put team here because one of the things that we realize is, a lot of times we can go our own path by ourselves, but team environment is important. It takes a village to raise a child. We're all familiar with that. And I think Sojourner saw that, saying, I'm not alone in this fight. It's just me. I'm standing here as a leader, but I'm not alone. She She has a hands-on grasp of the work, and she is highly competent in empowering others to make the strongest contribution, promoting a team-first environment of respect, positivity, and excellence. And so I always use her as the original Good Trouble starter pack. And I know we usually relate that to John Lewis. So he's coming, so don't worry, he's coming in this presentation. So let me talk about the history of intersectionality with you. Talks and theories of intersectionality have dated back to abolitionists such as Sojourner Truth. In 1858, Sojourner gave a speech at the Ohio's Women's Right Convention. In this speech, she called out the hypocrisy of the movement, declaring that when they talk about women, they really only mean white women. In this image, she is knitting and she's looking directly into the painter's eyes. The powerful poem that she gave was Ain't I a Woman? It highlighted all the intersectionality pieces of being a Black woman in America, in society, and being female. The poem was proof of the long tradition of intersectionality without the word in Black feminism. That is, being Black is not the same thing as being Black plus being a woman. The social, political, and economic forces that create the social positions of being Black and those that contribute to that of being woman cannot simply be added to one another. They intersect to become something new, and they do so with various other social locations to create specific and conjunctural location of disadvantage. So after Truth's stirring up of the conversation of intersectionality, the ideology gained more and more popularity. However, nobody was able to put a word to it until Kimberly Crenshaw came along, when she coined the term intersectionality in 1989. She was criticizing work that created race and gender as an exclusive part of human experience, and that as a result ignored Black women's experiences. Her analysis meant to highlight that Black women's experience of oppression differed from white women's, whose main focus on a gender discrimination, and also from Black men's, who predominantly were focused on racial subjugation. Audre Lorde, an African-American radical feminist, womanist, lesbian, and civil rights activist. As a poet, she is best known for technical mastery and emotional expression, particularly in her poems expressing anger and outrage at civil and social injustices she observed throughout her life. Her poems and her prose largely dealt with issues related to civil rights, feminism, and the exploration of Black female identity. In relation to white feminists in the United States, Lorde famously said, "The master tools will never dismantle the master's house." I want you guys to reflect on that as we're going through this. The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. Today, intersectionality is used to address identities beyond race and gender. These identities include, but certainly are not limited to, class, religion, sexual orientation, age, ability, and ethnicity. People who do social justice work have come to realize that talking about people in a multifaceted way, instead of focusing solely on one aspect, produces a much more open and safe environment. While intersectionality in the past mainly focused on multiple identities of women, this concept is one that is applicable to all genders. One person's identity cannot be talked about without addressing all their other identities. Practicing this will allow us to move forward towards being more inclusive, as well as unlearning our own internalized dominance and oppression, and thus moving closer to liberation. So looking at this image, you have a crossroad, and you see xenophobia, racism, heteroism, sexism, ableism, classism. All the isms intersect. You cannot approach one person and believe that there is not any compounding factors that contribute to their personality, to their experience. Intersectionality is the complex cumulative way in which the effects of multiple forms of discrimination, such as all the isms that I addressed earlier, combine, overlap, and intersect, especially in the experiences of marginalized individuals or groups. The next slide I have for you is a video of Kimberly Crenshaw discussing intersectionality. Okay, just joking. I'm going back and I'm going to hit play. I think I have to hit it outside. Hold on one moment. Okay, come on, Kimberly.
Intersectionality is just a metaphor for understanding the ways that multiple forms of inequality or disadvantage sometimes compound themselves, and they create obstacles that often are not understood within conventional ways of thinking about anti-racism or feminism or whatever social justice advocacy structures we have. Intersectionality isn't so much a grand theory, it's a prism for understanding certain kinds of problems. African American girls are 6 times more likely to be suspended than white girls. That's probably a race and a gender problem. It's not just a race problem, it's not just a gender problem. So I encourage people to think about how the convergence of race stereotypes or gender stereotypes might actually play out in the classroom, between teachers and students, between students and other students, between students and administrators, and commit themselves to understanding that as a way of intervening and providing equal educational opportunity for all students, regardless of their identities. Identity isn't simply a self-contained unit, it is a relationship between people in history, people in communities, people in institutions. So schools do a good job when they understand that and when they commit themselves to curricular development, to opportunities in the school for all students to understand the histories that have brought us to this particular moment. You can't change outcomes without understanding how they've come about. So independent schools can take the lead on that to be responsive to their student populations and to the communities out of which the students come.
So now let's move on to the health aspect. When we're talking about health and we're addressing intersectionality, how do we do so? According to Karen B. DeSalvo, the Assistant Secretary of Health of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, today, a person's zip code is a stronger determinant of health than their genetic code. I'm going to say that again. Today, a person's zip code is a stronger determinant of health than their genetic code. In a nation as wealthy as the United States, it's unconscionable that so many people die prematurely from a preventative disease. Even worse are the health disparities that continue to grow in many communities. Public health is what we do together as a society to ensure that the conditions in which everyone can be healthy. We often think of the healthcare industry when we think of health, but building healthy communities requires strategic collaboration across all sectors. When we build a complete infrastructure of healthy communities, we can begin to close the gaps in health due to race or ethnicity, gender, identity, or sexual orientation, zip code, or income. So as a public health professional, we like to have our acronyms and our theories and our systems. And one of the things about dismantling systematic oppression for all isms, for heterosexuals, for homosexuals, for everybody, is we have to look at the zip codes. We have to look at the factors that are affecting our health. We know that physical environment plays a large impact on our health. Right now, we are understanding what environmental racism looks like when we see industrialized communities, factories, and plants affecting those of a marginalized population, right? So we're seeing the long-term health outcomes right now of that, having meals placed in communities that we know that lower income individuals work at. Let's talk about social support and coping skills. Are we providing the social support and coping skills, the appropriate social support and coping skills for those that are located in areas that may not have access to care? When we see a patient that comes in and we address them, are we automatically addressing them because of the color of their skin, their gender, or are we looking behind the lens of intersectionality? So social determinants of health are conditions in the environment, in which people are born, live, work, play, worship, and age that affect a wide range of health, functioning, and quality of life outcomes and risks. We use social determinants of health to be able to have that intersectional lens. When we see an individual come in and they're 10 minutes late for their appointment, are we actually saying that this mother and child who are coming into our appointment, are we addressing them as a mother with a toddler? Or are we addressing them as a single Black mother who has to take a bus an hour away for a drive that would normally take us 10 minutes? Let's talk about health equity. Everyone should have a fair opportunity to attain optimum health. The image to your left shows you that public health and social justice go hand in hand in achieving health equity. We use social determinants of health to really determine health equity. Public health's commitment to social justice makes it a natural fit with intersectionality. It focuses on multiple historical oppressed population. There's often a one-dimensional approach where people just focus on maybe gender issues or race issues when it comes to program planning and design and delivery and evaluation, and not really looking into multiple issues. Typically in public health, programs are designed to address a single issue and not take into consideration the multifaceted and compounding factors that disadvantaged communities and individuals have. A lot of you are going to be familiar with my current slide. On this slide, there are various faces. Some you're going to definitely recognize immediately, and some you're not going to understand or not recognize, maybe because media hasn't highlighted their story, or maybe just because it was just another story. Trayvon Martin. The image that we are used to seeing in the media of Trayvon Martin is a boy in a hoodie. Trayvon Martin was a 17-year-old African-American male from Miami Gardens, Florida, who was fatally shot in Sanford, Florida by George Zimmerman. Trayvon Martin was based on the race of his skin. Trayvon Martin was shot because of the race of his skin, not because he was excelling in school, not because he was a proud, his mom and dad were proud of him, not because of all the other lenses. He was killed for the color of his skin. MJ Rodriguez. If anybody who watches Pose, you know MJ Rodriguez as Blanca. I'm a big Pose fan as well. Is known for her role as Blanca Rodriguez Evangelista in the television drama Pose, where she is among the largest cast of transgendered actresses to be starring as a series of regular in scripted shows. MJ Rodriguez went to school for acting, very successful, very, very smart, very driven. But when they see her, now you see a woman. When MJ Rodriguez was transitioning, you saw a confused boy. Not you as in the participants, but that's what the media saw. That is what the common eye saw. They didn't see that there was talent behind what was in front of them. Eminem, Marshall Mathers, Slim Shady. 8 Mile is significant for the racial divide, right? Where he comes from, the road served as a far too cultural dividing line between the predominantly poor Black city and its wealthier, predominantly white northern suburbs. The perception of 8 Mile as the chief dividing line between racial groups and classes persists in parts because of the suburban counties of Oakland and Macomb remain, on the whole, significantly wider and more prosperous than the city of Detroit. However, in recent years, increasing numbers of whites have moved into Detroit, especially around the downtown area, and other neighborhoods in the regions have become more ethnically diverse as well populated, predominantly below the poverty line. If anybody knows one of Eminem's first videos, he depicts the lifestyle he lived from the 8 Mile at 8 Mile. Trailer park, lack of access to care, lack of access to resources. But when you see him walking the street, do you think that another white male will feel that this individual grew up in a place where it was predominantly Black? Not really. Ronnie Long, our own Ronnie Long, a North Carolina man who was wrongly imprisoned for 44 years. He's finally free. Ronnie Long is of Concord, and he was convicted by an all-white jury in 1976 for the brutal rape of a 54-year-old widow. Decades later, after many appeals, a judge finally allowed Long's attorney to review biological evidence from the scene. The evidence supported his profession of innocence, but he was wrongfully accused. In 1976, in Concord, our very own Concord. Down to your left corner, Michelle Cross, fatally shot by the police after having a mental health crisis. In this image, she does not look like she had any kind of mental health issues. Adele, we love Adele. But if anybody knew the background behind Adele, Adele has various intersections. Coming from a single mother in a very diverse neighborhood in South London. But who does her music appeal to? Her music appeals to white women. She ranks far on the charts with white women. We have a few other images and people that you may or may not recognize, but I want you to look at the bottom left corner of the two gentlemen. Many of you will know them as the Columbine shooters. These two gentlemen, Eric David Harris and Dylan Bennett Klebold, were American mass murderer duos who killed 13 people and wounded 24 others on April 20th, 1999. If anybody remembers where they were during the Columbine shooting, that was our first notification of internal terrorism in America. But the intersectionality of it was these gentlemen were suffering more than what the eye could see. Very complex individuals. So talking about intersectionality and public health, Lisa Boleg is a social psychologist known for her work on intersectionality and research focusing on the influence of social contexts on stress, resilience, and HIV risk among African Americans and Latinx men and women. Public health commitment to social justice makes it a natural fit with intersectionality, focuses on multiple historically oppressed populations. Yet despite a plethora of research focused on these populations, public health studies that reflect intersectionality in their theoretical frameworks, designs, analysis, or interpretations are rare. In this image, you are going to see an individual standing, all of the things that intersect on this individual. And of course, it's non-binary. The image, the person is non-binary in the middle. Gender, ethnicity, culture, language, class, age, ability, sexuality, education, race. When we look at people, when we serve our clients, when we address people, are we looking at them from face value, or are we thinking about all the factors that influence them? Working with social science and public health to examine the ways that gender, race, and class are mutually constituted and interconnected. Intersectionality is applied in public health practice, policy, and research, focusing on the social determinants of health and health equity. Intersectionality is an approach or lens that recognizes that health is shaped by a multi-dimensional overlapping of factors. Once again, when we leave this presentation and we are doing the good work that we are all doing in our respective domains, and a lot of us are service-led, the service that we provide is not just based off of looking at someone. The service we provide is realizing all the gaps that this individual may be suffering from. Let's talk about shaping our lens around race and other isms. How can we make our society more intersectional? At this point, if anybody has any comments about intersectionality, we can discuss them. Okay. Any questions? Let the moderator go ahead.
I do not have any questions posted to the chat yet, Betty. So if any of you have questions, please post them on the chat at this time.
And I don't mind dialogue. If I have a few questions, I can go back to the other slide.
Okay, I do have one question. How do you see us moving forward with awareness and impact change?
That is a good question. How do I see us moving forward? I believe it's just not about talk. It's more about action. A lot of times we tell people to do their research, but yes, do your research, but have the discussion. Encourage dialogue, ask questions, seek answers. We see a lot of things and we question them internally and we never question them externally. Moving forward with change is definitely difficult. We are going to be hindered several times when we're moving forward with change. So the next steps of looking from an intersectional lens is saying, I see you, I understand you, especially in the client service. When we are serving our clients and our patients at Cabarrus Health Alliance, what we try and practice is making sure that not only are we assisting them, but we are here for them if they have any confounding factors. So asking questions and moving forward.
Okay, the next question, Betty, is what are some tips for incorporating intersectionality in public health service delivery?
So one of the things that we are working on at Cabarrus Health Alliance is incorporating a social determinants of health tool questionnaire, because that will assist us in service delivery. When we have questions that are designed for surveying, is using an intersectional lens, or what we may call an equity lens, to break down all the barriers that may hinder someone of achieving optimum health. Any other questions?
That's all I see right now, Betty. Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
I'm just thankful to be here. I really appreciated it. If anybody does have any questions, you guys can reach me at Cabarrus Health Alliance. I am actually on the website under accreditation link, and it'll connect you to my personal email, or I can put it in the chat here, or not my personal email, my work email. So.
Hey,
Okay.
Betty, somebody did ask if you wouldn't mind reviewing the other 2 or 3 pictures of the individuals from the collage.
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to do that, but I didn't know how much time I had. I was like, am I talking too much? So, okay. Let's keep on going. So we talked about Ronnie Long. We talked about Michelle. We talked about Eric, David. Let's talk about Matthew Wayne Shepherd. So Matthew Wayne Shepherd is the black and white image. He was a gay American student at the University of Wyoming who was beaten and tortured and left to die on the night of October 6, 1998. He was taken by rescuers to the hospital where he died from severe head injuries 6 days later. This was the first publicized homophobic killing. He changed, just like George Floyd, he changed the way we viewed individuals who are LGBTQIA. His death stirred up a lot of emotions where we realized those individuals are oppressed as well. And when we see them, they have more confounding factors. So let me see who else. Tanisha Anderson.
Hello, Betty. Do you mind resharing your screen?
Oh,
because we don't see that image.
Yes, I forgot. I tend to do that a lot. Oh my
No
God.
problem. We want to see the black and white image.
All my presentations are like this. I don't know why. I tend to do that a lot. Okay, here we go. So the one that
still no image.
Still no image. Okay, here we go.
There you go.
Am I good now?
There you are. Okay.
Here it is. Yes.
All right. Okay, let me open up this slide. Okay, where'd it go? Right here. Hold on 1 minute. I have like multiple screens, so I'm trying to make sure I have all my screens.
We see it now.
See it now. Okay, great. So we just reviewed Matthew Wayne Shepherd. He is the black and white image down on your right. The next is Tanisha Anderson. She was taken into custody last November, and they slammed her onto the pavement and handcuffed her. She was taken into police custody. She was having a mental health crisis. She was disoriented and kept trying to leave the house, whereas her child who was worried about her called the police. And so we don't recognize mental health. What we see first when we look at Tanisha is a Black woman who is erratic, who is, acting. And so therefore, what are we going to do? She's a threat. She kept trying to leave the house and they were trying to protect her. And basically by the time she left and someone called 911, the police arrived and they saw her as a threat. They didn't see her as an individual struggling with mental health. They didn't see her as an individual or a mother of children. They saw her as a threat. The image to your left, below Eminem, Ayanna Monet Stanley Jones, 7-year-old African-American girl from Detroit East Side who was shot in the head and killed by police officer Joseph Weekley during a raid conducted by the Detroit Police Department Special Response Team on May 16, 2010. Weekley was charged in the connection with Jones' murder. In 2011, he was charged with involuntary manslaughter and reckless endangerment with a gun. His first trial ended in a mistrial in June 2013. His retrial began in September 2014, and on October 3rd, the judge dismissed the involuntary manslaughter charge against Weekley, leaving him on trial for only one charge, recklessly discharging a firearm. On October 10th, the second trial ended another mistrial. On January 28, 2015, a prosecutor cleared him of all charges against him, ensuring there would be no third trial. The location of Ayanna's home, her age, her race, all played a confounding factor in her death. As many people would say, it was a raid. They were, going to the house to do their due diligence. The police officers were right. But we don't look at the intersectionality part about it. She was in bed sleeping. She wasn't a threat, but it was where she lived. She didn't have control over that. Her age, she doesn't have control of that. Her culture, her society, she didn't have control over that. Next one down below her image, and this image is the same image of the same person. The victim is Carlos Ingram Lopez, 27-year-old cooking school graduate who prepared every meal from scratch for his 2-year-old daughter and watched YouTube videos to learn how to comb her hair. His death, as we have seen, was a mental health crisis. He was having a mental health crisis. Police were called for help. A jarring reminder that Latinos, as well as African Americans, have a troubled history with the police. Even though Latino struggles do not get the same attention. Latino men has faced several several hindrances to receiving mental health care, right? One of the things that you'll see if you look on mental health demographics and you'll break it down and look at the demographics, you see that predominantly white people are receiving mental health care. Because Black people, what is the first thing that they tell you is to go to Jesus, go with God. It's abnormal, right, to have mental health issues, but it's also abnormal for the police to understand mental health issues and also understand that this person, a person of color, is not a threat, but they're actually having a crisis. Cabarrus Health Alliance has a mental health task force, and they have worked extremely hard in making sure that individuals who are in the justice system receive mental health care. But one of the things that we can definitely say that is there is a gap that needs to be bridged to offering mental health services to all, not just specifically for one race.
Betty, I do have some more questions here.
Yeah.
The next question is, what would you say to health educators to move community members towards empowerment?
Move community members. One of the things that I would definitely say is you can't do it for them. Being that I am a health educator, one of the things that I realized very quickly when I worked in South Carolina, the environment that I worked in, it was an environment of complacency. And so if you don't necessarily give the individuals the tools, you can give them all the education, right? You can give them all the education, but if you don't give them the tools to empower themselves, they are unable to see beyond what's in front of them. So being that you're a health educator and you have this lens of intersectionality and you see that there may be a hindrance for the individuals or the clients that you serve, you have to find out what that is. Is it education piece? Is it access to services? Is it the fact that they themselves may be having any kind of issues such as ability issues, language issues, cultural issues? And so you have to dig a little bit deeper to be able to empower a community to take initiative. Patience is always perfect too.
Thank you. Yeah. And the last question I have right now is, what's up with calling the young killers gentlemen? And now we call senior male by his name. I've noticed this trend and it irks me.
So it's interesting because I actually don't understand how sometimes the media can spin basically how they describe individuals. One of the things that I'm thankful for in this time, in this space, is social media is always, you can get a lot of irrelevant information and a lot of misguided information from social media, but the truth always comes out. Having a phone is your best power to truth. But yes, I have noticed that there has been a media spin. I'm not necessarily sure how we're going to address it. I'll leave that up to the experts in communications and media. But yeah, it's definitely when they label and they give, rather than giving facts, they'll say, oh, this killer, he serves in his community and he does all of this and all the good stuff. One of the things that we saw very quickly with the George Zimmerman trial and Trayvon Martin, a grown man fighting a young child. but yet the grown man feared for his life. So, any other questions?
Looks like that's all we have.
I do see one more question I think that we missed earlier.
Did I miss it?
It says, what advice can you give an early career public health professional about protecting their mental health in the current social climate with the pandemic, racism, social injustice, etc.?
Shut it all down at the end of the day. And I know it's easier said than done, but being aware of your triggers. I realize we're talking election time right now. I had to shut it down. I had to take a step away and be able to practice self-care. Being health educators or being public health professionals, a lot of times we get so heavily involved in our work that we don't realize that we are taking on the emotional toll. And so it's a part of causing good trouble, but also being self-aware and saying, hey, I might have hit my max on this, and being vulnerable and being transparent. A lot of times when I was teaching in my early career days, and I realized that I could teach from a book every day, but if I didn't make that personal connection with my participants, I wasn't doing them justice. I was doing a job and I was there and I was not connecting. But I also realized I'm making these personal connections. So now I really care. I care that your A1C is lowered. I care that you are managing your blood pressure. And so I become involved. And what I had to do is say, okay, I can come involved and I can give you all the tools and techniques, but I need to be able to also protect my peace. So yes, there's a lot of self-care techniques and tools that we can all use. I'm still learning, I'm still trying to cut off the laptop and cut off the cell phone and just be, to focus on me. So my weekends are really my weekends where I'm trying not to do work. And as health educators and young professionals, we have to understand self-care is important, because if we're not ready or if we are not centered, then our participants, our clients, and our patients see that too.
Okay. LaDonna, I don't see any other questions. Do you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Betty, we want to thank you so much. Everyone, we're going to post links in the chat. We would love for you to join us and participate in the next sessions. So I'm going to share that on the screen with you now. We have upward mobility and the pathway to senior executive roles, women with disabilities, and the who, why, how, and where of the Hispanic Latinx access to higher ed. Everyone, if you could, just look in the chat box and participate in one of those. Again, thank you, Betty Foe, for participating and helping us with our conference.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I wish you all well and enjoy all the other sessions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.